Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. In this video, we are going to discuss a series of documents and things that have come to light regarding the Bell 206 series of helicopters. Now, I want to be super crystal clear in this video that I am not speculating on causation, and I don't know if any of these events and documents that I'm going to share with you correlate or if there's any connection, but the purpose of this channel has always been to talk about helicopters, share interesting things about helicopters. I just love helicopters, and I want to use this platform to share critical information, and I believe this is critical information. So I don't know that any of this is correlated, but there might be something to explore and discover here and for people to learn about. So in this video, we are going to break down some documents, and at the end of the video, I'm going to put it all together and share with you what my thoughts are. Let's get into it. To lay the groundwork for this story, it begins in my eyes with that Bell 206 accident that happened in New York City about 2 months ago. From the time of filming this video, it was just under 2 months ago, an in-flight breakup of a Bell 206 tour helicopter, an absolutely terribly tragic incident. All helicopter crashes and incidents, and especially when there's fatalities, are all tragic, but this one has shed a new light and it feels a little bit different. Mainly because I think it was in New York City, which is a very crowded area and there's a lot of helicopters, and maybe more specifically that this was caught on so many different cameras from so many different angles. And importantly, when a helicopter accident happens, a lot of times, or any aviation accident, a lot of times there is a very clear cause, whether it be pilot error, like fuel starvation, inadvertent IMC, whatever it may be, controlled flight into terrain, the pilot wasn't paying attention, anything. Sometimes it's very clear, or sometimes it's clearly a mechanical problem. Something broke, and we can pretty quickly identify that something broke and something went wrong. In this case, it is not at all clear, and there is not a common consensus as to what happened. There is not a very clear set of events that led to something breaking or the pilot doing something wrong. So we are all in the dark, and we have so many videos and sounds and witness reports, but we don't know exactly what's going on. So that's kind of why this incident has felt like it's been highlighted so much. So what we're going to do is I'm going to read the preliminary report from the FAA. Now, I know a lot of people have read this, and I think I've read this on my channel too. I've talked about it, but I want to highlight a couple of interesting things, followed by two interesting documents afterwards, and then I will summarize it. So let's read the initial preliminary report from the FAA. All right, this is from the National Transportation Safety Board. This incident occurred on April 10th, 2025 at 3:15 local. It was a Bell 206 L4 operated under Part 91 General Aviation, registration November 216 Mike Hotel, and here's the accident number, and there were 6 fatalities. I'm just going to quickly read the synopsis. On April 10th, 2025 at about 15:15 Eastern Daylight Time, a Bell 206 L4 helicopter, November 216 Mike Hotel, was destroyed when it was involved in an accident near Jersey City, New Jersey. The pilot and 5 passengers were fatally injured. The helicopter was operated as a Title 14 Code of Federal Regulations Part 91 air tour flight. Preliminary ADS-B flight track data obtained by the FAA revealed that the helicopter departed downtown Manhattan Wall Street Heliport, JRB, in New York at about 14:58. The helicopter flew a teardrop pattern south of the Statue of Liberty, then proceeded north along the east side of the Hudson River, adjacent Manhattan, past the George Washington Bridge, where it performed a U-turn, then headed south along the New Jersey side of the river. Okay, we're all relatively familiar with this. Here's where it kind of gets interesting. Figure 2 depicts the plot of the helicopter's ADS-B observed flight path for the final 1 minute of the flight, with the reported time, altitude, and ground speed superimposed. As the helicopter approached the Holland Tunnel ventilation towers near Jersey City, New Jersey, it was at a geometric altitude between 625 and 650. The helicopter's altitude increased interesting, to 675 feet MSL before it entered a rapid descent. The data ended at 1514.54.5, and the helicopter's last observed altitude was 125 feet. Several witnesses described hearing several loud bangs emanating from the helicopter before it broke up and descended into the river. If you've been following this accident, you're probably familiar with this. Here's what I want to show you. So they were coming down. This is the last minute of flight. Everything is relatively normal. 700 feet. Here's the altitude, and we are descending. 725, 700, 650, 650, 625. Increases to 675. Maybe there's nothing here, but maybe there is something here. 650, 625, 675. So an up and then down, and it looks like this is where potentially the sequence of events and in-flight breakup potentially happened. So moving on, the documents that I want to share with you, there's two. And like I said, I do not know that there's any correlation. I don't know that there's any causation. I'm just stating that these have all kind of come up. The first one is from the FAA. This is an airworthiness concern sheet. This came out on May 6th, 2025. So post-accident. The accident was April 10th, 2025. And this airworthiness concern sheet is May 6th, January, February, March, April, May 6th of 2025. Airworthiness concern sheets, I'll be honest with you, I'm not super familiar with it. The FAA posts they have all sorts of documents. I'm not super familiar with an airworthiness concern sheet, but we can read through it and we can kind of understand what they're going for. Replied to James Gao, Aviation Safety Engineer, address, subject, Bell 206L series, airworthiness concern sheet, make Bell Textron Canada Limited 206L, L1, L3, L4, all serial numbers. Reason for airworthiness concern, in-flight abnormal vertical vibration. Federal Aviation Administration, FAA, description of airworthiness concern. The FAA has received reports of severe vertical vibrations on Bell 206L helicopters. These events are inconsistent in their repeatability. In addition, post-flight inspections have not identified any failure that caused the vibration event. Reports indicate that the vibration subsides once additional load is applied on the main rotor by increasing collective. The vibration may worsen with a low friction set on the collective. The FAA is aware of at least one event where continued vibration resulted in substantial damage to the helicopter's tailboom, but the aircraft was able to land safely. The NTSB is investigating the event, which was assigned to NTSB number WPR2RLA319. A preliminary report has been released. The FAA is investigating this concern. Now, this is not the same preliminary report. WPR LA319 is not this one for the 206 accident that happened in New York City. But this is very interesting. Request for information. So here's what the FAA is asking for. The FAA is interested in receiving any information on occurrences of in-flight abnormal vertical vibrations and the conditions and configurations of the rotorcraft at the time of the event. This includes any or all of the following information for new and past unreported events: configuration of the rotorcraft, specific series of the L model, L1, L3, or L4, any installed modifications or replacement parts, STC main or tail rotor blades, PMA tension torsion straps, aircraft weight when the event occurred, number of passengers, center of gravity location, maintenance friction setting for the collective, fuel weight when the event occurred, flight conditions during the vibration event, airspeed, altitude, maneuver being performed, climb, level flight descent, weather conditions such as wind speed and direction in any observed turbulence, date of the vibration event, actions performed by the pilot in response to the vibration event, any findings after the event that may have resulted from or attributed to the vibration, missing trip tab, failed structure. Please provide any information you feel may be helpful to us to consider as part of your evaluation. Down here in red, I mean, it's interesting to read this. This airworthiness concern sheet is intended as a means for the FAA aviation safety engineers to coordinate airworthiness concerns with aircraft owners and operators through associations and type clubs. At this time, the FAA has not made a determination of what type of corrective action, if any, should be taken. The resolution of the airworthiness concern could involve airworthiness directives, action, or special airworthiness information bulletin, or the FAA could determine that no action is needed at the time. The FAA's final determination will depend in part on the information received in response to this ACS. The FAA endorses dissemination of this technical information to all manufacturers and requests association and type club comments. Transmittal FAA, Airplane Owners and Pilots Association, type certificate holders, and other. So, interesting. Post a very high-profile Bell 206 accident, the FAA is issued a concern sheet asking for information about potential in-flight vertical vibrations. Like I said, we don't have any correlation that there's anything here, but according to the FAA's preliminary report, there was a vertical change. That could be nothing. Like, I mean, a change from 650 down to 625 up to 675 right immediately prior does not necessarily mean anything. But if you, I mean, just to quickly read back this, are inconsistent with the repeatability. Okay. Received reports of severe vertical vibrations on Bell 206L helicopters. These events are inconsistent with the repeatability. In addition, post-flight inspections have not identified any failure that caused the vibration event. Okay, this is what I wanted to come back to. Reports indicate that the vibration subsides once additional load is applied to the main rotor by increasing collective. The vibration may worsen with low friction set on the collective. So this is they're claiming that this is potentially a friction event. Moving on. Here's where it potentially is interesting. There is no correlation here, but this is interesting. There was a Van Horn, if you're unfamiliar, Van Horn is a company that makes so Bell produces their own blades for their helicopters. Van Horn makes aftermarket blades for, my understanding is, the main rotor and the tail rotor for the Bell 206 and other types of airframes. They released this service bulletin in March of 2025. So this is interesting. All serial numbers, information letter addresses collective bounce recovery and mitigation. So if you go on this website, and I want to be extremely clear, I just find this interesting. I'm not saying there's any correlation. I do not know. If anyone has any more information, please let me know in the comments, because I'm just pointing stuff out that is potentially interesting. So this came out the 17th of March, 2025, prior to the accident on April. January, February, March is the third month of the year, and then April is the fourth month. I know that's obvious, but I'm just explaining it to myself. Let's read this information letter from Van Horn. Collective bounce recovery and mitigation. The purpose of this, to inform pilots of the appropriate recovery method from collective bounce in the 206L Long Ranger and provide guidance for flight planning to avoid occurrences. In addition, several maintenance actions are identified to mitigate the issue. Background. Operator reports have indicated the potential for pilots to experience severe vertical vibrations on a small number of Bell 206L Long Ranger helicopters equipped with Van Horn Aviation VHA product number right here, 206-33000-101 main rotor blades. The phenomenon is characterized as a vertical vibration that develops in level flight or upon the initiation of a descent at 100 plus knots and quickly increases in intensity. In many cases, the vibration is not readily repeatable even on the same aircraft and in the same configuration. While the infrequency of occurrences and challenges with reproducibility have made this phenomenon difficult to study, the descriptions and confirmed recovery method described below are consistent with collective bounce, a known issue on the 206 family, as well as several other Bell helicopters with two-bladed teetering rotor systems. Recent investigation has determined that the vibration occurs at approximately 5 hertz, which is consistent with a tail boom natural frequency and available literature on collective bounce at 345. While investigation is still ongoing, collective bounce is characterized by an interaction between the pilot's hand on the collective stick and a vertical vibration of the airframe. Several aircraft configuration and maintenance items have been identified as potential contributors, which are described below. In addition, should pilots encounter this phenomenon in flight, the appropriate recovery method is presented. Some documents here. Procedures. If any aspect of this information letter is unclear, or if difficulties arise while implementing any of the instructions, contact Van Horn for additional support before proceeding any further with the work. Recovery method. This is so a very intense vibration with either cruise flight or entering a descent at greater than 100 knots. A very severe vertical vibration that will increase rapidly. If collective bounce is experienced in flight, immediately load the rotor by increasing collective, reducing speed, and turning right. Okay. Do not lower collective or enter in auto rotation. The vibration will only intensify and continue throughout the descent until the rotor is loaded again. If you continue reading down, they go into flight planning information, and this is actually quite relevant, and I just want to make it clear. Flight planning information, use caution or, if possible, avoid operation in the shaded region of Figure 1. This should not be constructed as an operational limitation or a certainty that a severe vibration will develop when operating in this region. Pilots should simply be aware of the possibility of a collective bounce to develop and be prepared to recovery if necessary. Critical here, critical. All reported instances have occurred with a single pilot operating aircraft in light configurations with approximately 300 pounds of fuel or less if possible. Ballasting the aircraft and or avoiding fuel burn below 300 pounds will likely avoid any occurrence. All reported instances have occurred with a single pilot operating aircraft in light configurations. I'm not correlating this, but I'm saying if there is the potential that this could have happened in the New York City accident, there were a lot of reports about a low fuel situation, or they're reporting that they needed fuel. And I used to do this job. I worked for a company down there, and I literally flew this exact same route. We would report when we had low fuel because we needed to get fuel. That's not an emergency. There's not necessarily. I don't necessarily think there's anything wrong with that. I mean, the investigation will prove what maybe there was more meaning to that, but I think the pilot was legitimately just reporting low fuel. So all reported instances have occurred with a single pilot operating the aircraft. That's a huge deal. In light configurations, with approximately 300 pounds of fuel or less. Was this a relatively light helicopter? I don't know. We'll see when the final investigation comes out. Let's keep going. If the weight CG envelope described in 1 above cannot be avoided, reduce speed to below 100 knots indicated airspeed. Avoid low-G maneuvers. All reductions in collective and forward cyclic should be applied slowly and smoothly. Increase collective friction via the friction knob as practical. Okay, very good and interesting. Maintenance actions. Let's just quickly go through this. Critical, perform and confirm blade alignment, IAW with the bell component repair and overhaul manual. Scope and method. Incorrect blade sweep has initially been identified as the most likely cause of the vertical vibration. Correcting blade sweep has so far been demonstrated to eliminate or reduce the vibration to a minor level. That's big. The location of the sweep pin on the VH Van Horn blades is not the same as the OEM blades. Blade alignment must be performed carefully and accurately when installing Van Horn blades. Using the same latch bolt setting as the OEM blades will result in a significant forward sweep. Interesting. Note, when using the string method for blade alignment, the alignment point is the top edge of the blade bolt chamfer. See figure 62.6 of the component repair and overhaul manual. Center main rotor trunnion. I'm not going to read all this. The stated requirement is dimensions. However, care should be taken within less than 0.0001 inch if possible. So, set collective minimum friction IAW with applicable bell maintenance manual. Adjust for collective minimum friction must be accomplished on the ground by qualified maintenance personnel and is not to be confused with the pilot's adjustable collective friction knob in the cockpit. Huge, right? Read that again. Adjustment for collective minimum friction must be accomplished on the ground by qualified maintenance personnel and is not to be confused with the pilot's adjustable collective friction knob in the cockpit. They're talking about something different here. This is not the pilot's collective friction. Perform track and bounce at speeds greater than 105 knots indicated up to VH. Tracking the rotor system at higher speeds has been shown to reduce the severity of vibrations. Sweeping both blades up to 2 points aft has been shown to further decrease the severity of vertical vibrations and increase the airspeed at which onset occurs. Points of contact. For further information, contact Van Horn and email Van Horn. The current version of this information letter can be accessed at the Van Horn website. So I just wanted to read through that so everyone has the full context of the information letter put out by Van Horn. To start off, I mean, the first point I want to make is this is not great. This is pretty bad. Even if there is no correlation, which I don't know if there's any correlation, I have no factual reason to believe this. It is really unideal that this is happening in these helicopters. Helicopters that have these blades have experienced a severe vertical vibration. That is terrifying. That should not happen in helicopters. I'm not trying to be harsh, but this cannot happen. This should not happen. We cannot have an industry. We have to advocate for more than this. This is not okay. And that's okay. I'm very grateful Van Horn is putting out information on this, but we need to figure out exactly what the heck is going on, and we need to identify whether it's the blades, how they're mounted, the collective hop. We don't know what the problem is, but we cannot have this. Then something needs to happen. So it's not okay that this is happening. There is something weird. What's also weird is the recovery method. You need to increase collective. Let me come back to this so we just reread this. If collective bounce is experienced in flight, immediately load the rotor by increasing collective, reducing speed, and turning right. So I'm going to pull collective, aft cyclic, and roll right. This is the recovery. This is a very abnormal recovery. There are certain things like, okay, there's the Vachard recovery method, which is where you increase collective and slide right, but that's for a totally different phenomenon. If I'm greater than 100 knots and I'm flying along, what I'm thinking about is retreating blade stall, and in retreating blade stall, when you start going quite fast, you lower collective. The proper procedure is not to increase collective. In most helicopter operations, your get out of jail free card, even in vortex ring state, if you have an engine problem, a transmission problem, if anything goes wrong, essentially lowering collective and getting yourself on the ground is the best cause of action. They say in this article, do not lower collective or enter in auto rotation. The vibration will only intensify and continue throughout the descent until the rotor is loaded again. What's interesting about this, there's many things interesting about this. In a two-bladed rotor system, we're all familiar with low G mass bumping. Now, I'm not saying that low G mass bumping was the cause of the New York City accident and that there was any correlation here. I don't know how many times I can say that. I don't know that there's any correlation. And to make that super crystal clear, to protect Van Horn, there is no information that I can find online about the Bell 206 accident that happened in New York City just under 2 months ago, that helicopter had Van Horn blades on it. I don't know that happened. This is all just interesting, and if it didn't have Van Horn blades, if that helicopter did not have Van Horn blades, then we're super clear. We have this own problem. Its own problem that needs to be dealt with because it's unacceptable, and I'm sure they understand and everyone understands that we can't have helicopters that are having these crazy hops and the recovery is to increase collective out cyclic and roll right. It's just this is not ideal for how helicopter pilots are trained, and it's not safe, and severe vibrations cause a lot of tension and problems and can cause a lot of damage. So that's their own problem. But nonetheless, this is a crazy situation. So what's kind of interesting here about the FAA's airworthiness concern sheet is I don't know that these two things are correlated. I don't know if I don't know if any of this is correlated. I keep saying it, but I'm going to keep saying it because it's true. I don't know. The FAA has received reports of severe vertical vibrations in a Bell 206L helicopters. Well, this is talking about severe vertical vibrations. Experience severe vertical vibrations. Exact same terminology. And then we go back. Right here. These events are inconsistent in their repeatability. And then you go back here. On a small number of Bell 206 long-range helicopters equipped with the Van Horn blades, the phenomenon is characterized as a vertical vibration that develops in level flight or upon the initiation of descent at 100 plus knots and quickly increases in intensity. if we come back to the preliminary investigation, so what's interesting here is this may add correlation, and I didn't actually think about this when I was briefing the video, but if you look at the speed here, 92, 89, 88, 92, 95 knots, 95 knots. So this speed, were they in a descent? Okay, yeah, they were level, very shallow descent, from 15:13:54 to 15:14:24, like 30 seconds. They're descending here, but their airspeed is not super high. So that's interesting. Like I said, maybe there is no correlation. But so they were definitely in a descent, and their airspeed was relatively high. Let's see what it specifically says about on 100 knots indicated airspeed. KIAS, knots indicated airspeed. So this is ground speed. ADSB data, to the best of my understanding, ADSB data is ground speed. So, what are the winds? Because maybe there was a headwind at this moment. Winds. Sorry, I'm just working through this, and let's see what the winds were. JRB winds 150 southwesterly at 10 knots, gusting to 18 from 150, which is like southeasterly. I don't know if that's what I just said. So 100 knots indicated airspeed versus, right here, speed and altitude. You could have had like 92, 95, and from 15:14:44 to 15:14:46. So over the course of, I guess it's like a second, speed increases 3 knots. It's not that much. But could there have been a gust of wind and, potentially your airspeed, the entire time the airspeed is likely to have been above this? Because if you go here, we just saw it, but we know that the winds 150 at 10, so likely at altitude, probably similar, at least 10 knots. You could likely assume that this aircraft was greater than 100 knots indicated airspeed, and quickly increases in intensity. In many cases, the vibration is not readily repeatable on the same aircraft. I think they said that the vibration may worsen with a low friction set on the collective, but the aircraft was able to land safely. So the point of me making this video is to share interesting information about the Bell 206. I titled this video like "What's going on with the Bell 206?" because there's clearly something going on with the Bell 206. This vibration from Van Horn is from what Van Horn released and what the FAA had. I don't know if what the airworthiness concern sheet from the FAA correlates to what Van Horn is saying, but it appears from my very basic understanding that they kind of sound like similar things. I don't know that they're correlated, but they sound potentially like they are talking about similar types of things. Something is going on with the Bell 206. That accident in New York City, we have no idea what caused that. It is just interesting, and I have flown the Bell 206. It's a great helicopter. That is one of the most produced aircraft in the world, and it is very time proven and time tested. There are still a lot of operators out there flying the Bell 206 for all sorts of things, all the way up into offshore oil rig flying and helicopter air ambulance work. So if there's something going on with the Bell 206 model, people's lives are potentially, I don't know, at risk, but people need to know that this is going on, and maybe there is something going on. Clearly there is a hop, and the FAA is to the point where they have a concern sheet because something is going on. The information presented by the Van Horn document about a potential collective bounce needs to be told, and people need to be made aware of that. The airworthiness concern sheet, people need to be made aware of that. It is just interesting that the airworthiness concern sheet comes, a little bit after a prolific incident. And like I said, I do not know what's going on. I sound like a broken record, but I want to be extremely clear that I do not have any correlation data for this, but I want people to be aware of this, and I want to understand what everyone's thoughts are down below. From everyone's research, from everyone in the helicopter pilot community, let's try to understand what's going on. We don't need to like negatively speculate, but I said this when I talked about the Bell 206 accident initially, you can't ask people to not speculate and try to figure out. Like I said, people are actively flying these helicopters because they are good helicopters. So if there is a problem or a defect with these helicopters, we are all going to try to figure it out, and it would be wrong for us to not try to figure it out. So that is all we were trying to do. I am trying to be extremely careful with how I say, because I don't know exactly what's going on, but I'm open to being wrong. I'm open to knowing what other people's hypotheses and thoughts are. My purpose with this is to educate and to share important information that the FAA is trying to get out, that Van Horn is trying to get out. I don't know of any correlation, but I will finish the video there. I want to know everyone's thoughts. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and I will see you on the next one. Take care.